But look, we have to start with a serious question about the viability of Australia's energy system to cope with the rapid transition to renewable energy. This week's serious electricity blackout for more than 500,000 homes and businesses did indeed start with a violent storm in Victoria that brought down transmission lines in the inner west of the state, which in turn tripped the state's biggest coal-fired power station, Loy Yang A. Green leaders and the Labor government argue that this is a reason to move even faster into renewables, so more wind, more solar, more batteries. The problem is, and will be for decades, transmission, even if you can build enough wind and solar farms. The bigger problem is that Australia seeks to become a smart country, making things and competing internationally. But no country can ever do that unless it has affordable and reliable energy. No chief executives whose business makes anything will risk investment in a state or country that can't provide and assure both of those things. Now, the Victorian government has a philosophy of bypassing gas to move straight from coal-generated electricity to wind and solar. And one day, no doubt, it will get there. But for now, it's putting philosophy ahead of the science and also the economics. And that's going to cost jobs, economic development and the standard of living for all of Victorians, to say nothing of the occasional electricity blackout because of a vulnerable energy grid. So let's bring in here Andrew Richards, Chief Executive of the Energy Users Association of Australia, which represents those most vulnerable to the blackouts, the biggest industrial companies in Australia. Andrew, many thanks for your time. Is that a fair summation of where we sit in Australia in terms of energy right now?
Thanks, Ross. Look, there's a lot of parallel conversations that are being had, not only now as a result of the impact of this storm, but ongoing. So it's important to recognise what happened this week was more about the resilience of the energy system rather than the reliability of the energy system. And they're two different things. So reliability goes to a little bit to your intro as to, do we have enough generated capacity and storage and other things in place to replace the ageing fossil fuels? That's about reliability of the system. The resilience of the system is about, do we have sufficient strength in networks to avoid or to mitigate some of these significant storms that we're seeing coming through? So yes, the impacts have been in two-part. The transmission line being struck down and destroyed as it was meant that a number of generators, wind, solar and coal, closed themselves down to not only protect themselves, but to protect the system. So that's one impact, and that was recovered pretty quickly by the Australian Energy Market Operator. The other impact, which is far more important for consumers in this instance, was that the widespread damage to the distribution network, and that took out almost 500,000 customers, and I think there's about 120,000 customers who are still off supply, including some of our member companies. So we've got to be really important. It's really important that we talk about the right things when these things happen. This wasn't about generation. That's a conversation for plenty of other days. This was about resilience of the system, what we need to do to harden the system, whether customers are prepared to pay for that, and whether indeed hardening the system will actually avoid these things in the future. So very different conversations because they're dealing with different problems.
So is the ultimate resilience really the interconnectors with the other states? You saw Tasmania, for example, sending significant amounts of electricity into Victoria, South Australia likewise, and it was coming down from the North Queensland and New South Wales. Is that the ultimate insurance or resilience in the system?
It's an interesting question. It's a good question, Ross. It's part of the solution. And I think, so what we saw just before this storm hit was Victoria was exporting power to New South Wales and to South Australia and to Tasmania. When it hit, we started importing power from South Australia and particularly from Tasmania. So it's part of the solution, but there are other solutions potentially that are emerging as well. For example, we have a lot of solar, rooftop solar PV. Now, if you could install community scale batteries, there could be a time in the future where whole communities and whole suburbs could isolate themselves from these sorts of impacts and self-supply for a period of time.
Andrew Richards from the Energy Users Association. Always good to chat to you. Many thanks for your time today.